Hey friends, it's Kira with Polymer Clay TV, and I'm going to do a pair of earrings that has been on my mind for a little while because of the techniques involved, and I just wanted to share it with you. I also want to wear these earrings, so I'm going to make them. Here we go. So if you've been in my world a little while, you know that this is my favorite color. It's not really even a color, but I do a lot of my clothing and decorating in gray. And this is Sculpey Premo Graphite Pearl. I surely hope they never discontinue this color because I just love it. And one of the reasons I love it for jewelry is because I think it's a really perfect antique silver color. And when you're doing things that mimic metals, it's nice to have this as the background color. So I've got this rolled to a number 2 on my Atlas Mercado pasta machine, which is a medium thickness. And what I tend to prefer for earrings, I'm just kind of trying to press this down to my background tile so that I can cut and design on this tile and not have to move the clay, right? So I'm going to use wide drops as my shape for the dangle part of this earring. And this is a set that comes in 5 different sizes, top to bottom. And I'm probably gonna, let's see how big I want them to be. Let's choose the middle 2. So I've got this one, and we're gonna make a kind of fan shape with this. And how we're gonna do that, oh, look at what I've done. That's okay. I can maybe just flip this over. There we go. All right, so what we're gonna do is cut out and assemble. So this doesn't even matter. I'm freaking out about nothing. So here we go. We're gonna cut these out. 1, 2 of the biggest one that I'm gonna use. And of course, I don't have my tools at the ready. All right, so 2 of the biggest one. And then we need 4 of the smaller one. And for that, I think I'm going to use some cutter sauce to help me. I also like to use my little unicorn brush to spread out the cutter sauce. So here we go. Let's see if this works. This cutter isn't necessarily that sticky, but it is warm in my studio tonight, so I feel like things are just sticking. So we need 4 of this shape, which we now have. And then I'm going to do a flower for the topper. So for this, definitely spritzing the clay, make sure it's nice and wet. We've got that shape and another one. Of course, that one's going to stick. I'm not concerned about the center because I'm going to make the center out of another shape. So let's get these out of here. All right, and that's all I need in this color. So I've got my 2 centers, little flowers. Just leave that one where it is. And then we're going to build this into a composite shape. So I've got this as the middle, and then I'm going to lay this on the side here up against it. And do that twice. I'm going to push them up against each other, and I'm not going to worry a whole lot about the seams because I have another plan for that. All right, so I'm done with these cutters. They can go away. All right, so this flower comes in 3 sizes, and I really like this size for making studs. All right, so I lied because I need to use this graphite pearl color one more time. And what it's going to be for is a detail, right? So I'm going to roll it a little bit thinner. Okay, so here I have it rolled to a 3, which is thin, not super thin, but thin enough. And I'm going to take my texture rod. Now we have these in 3 different sizes as far as the threads. And sometimes they're longer than this, sometimes they're shorter. This is the one I have right now, and I'm going to give it a good roll over my surface of the clay so it gets a ribbing on it. And then I'm going to use a nice straight blade. So I've got my blue steel blade. And I'm going to cut a little strip. Just like that. And this strip is going to go in this space here between the seams. So I'm going to find a good spot where I've got a lot of detail to cut that off and lay this in this channel. And this is where having a good little X-Acto blade will help, or some other kind of tool with a point on it so you can get in there and cut off the end. Of course, I don't know where my X-Acto blade is at the moment, but that's okay because I have my needle tool. Right, so then we're going to get the other side and go up this side seam the same way. This one, I feel I'll bend it around so it kind of matches up with that one. Right, so this is what I'm doing. And then I'll use my tool to press it down in between and to fix where I put it here. All right, and then I'll do the other one. So what I'm trying to mimic is how on a lot of sterling silver southwestern style jewelry, you'll see these rows of silver beads on them, and they're kind of made like this. They're made with a strip of silver. They're not individual beads. Sometimes they are laid on there like solder beads, but Usually there's some kind of strip of silver involved. Right, and then you can touch up the pattern and pay attention, because what you put in the oven is what you get out of the oven. So you want to touch things up before baking. Make sure things look the way you want them. I'm going to set this aside for a minute because next I'm going to make some faux turquoise. And for that, I have some colors sitting here. That I pulled out of my scrap drawer. Right, I also always have some kind of rag here to clean up when you're working and switching between colors. You definitely want to clean up your workspace just a little, get those scraps of clay out of the way. And here I have some green, white, and blue. So this is going to be the basis of a turquoise color. And I'm just going to mix this through my pasta machine for a minute and get it blended. All right, so to make our faux turquoise, I've got some matte paint. You can use chalk paint. You can use regular acrylic paint if you want. I've got some gold leaf flakes. You can gather them up yourself, or we've got some like this at CreateAlong. And then I've got my piece of clay. So you'll notice I did not fully, completely blend it. And I'm making such a small bit of this turquoise because honestly, I only need just a small amount, right? So I'm going to do what we refer to in polymer clay right now as chippy chop. And we're just going to chippy chop this clay up into some random pieces. I'm making such a tiny amount that I'm going to cut the pieces tiny and as random as I can so that they're not cubes. In the end, this doesn't matter all that much, but a lot of people ask, what's that white stuff? What are you doing? So here we go. We've got this. We've got the tiniest amount of white paint because this is going to provide a little bit of veining through the clay. Just a little bit. You see people dumping liquid clay and white paint and all kinds of things in between their clay pieces, and that is just not necessary. We're going to do the same thing with a little flake of this stuff. Sometimes you see a vein of gold going through turquoise. That's what this is for. Just a little, just the littlest bit. I don't need a lot. Okay, and we'll just tuck this back in its container for another day. Okay, and we're just going to kind of mess around with this for a minute. And then to top it all off, if you will remember, I did a reel on Instagram. If you're not following me there, I do lots of short content there. And one of the things I talked about a couple weeks ago is the fact that I make a lot of black earrings for my personal Etsy shop. And I started saving the shavings from the drill when I start drilling the earrings. So I'm going to dump this around here because turquoise, real turquoise, can have little specks of black in it. So we'll pick those up as we're making our little lump of turquoise here. Now you'll notice I let the paint dry, right? And I don't need liquid clay on this. This is a small amount of clay. And clay to clay is the best connection. We don't need to make it super wet by adding a whole bunch of liquid clay on here. Right? I'm just going to kind of roll it in a little log. not press it too tight because real turquoise has little veins and things running through it. And I just want some little rounds to go in the middle of my stud earring. So I'm going to get a piece of deli wrap, the plastic kind. Maybe make this just a little bit thinner. I'll show you how thick it is in a second. So it's about that thick, so I can make a nice stone out of it. Look at both sides, see what you've got going on. I like these gold sections, so I'm going to try to capture those. So here we go. We've got our clay. We've got a little round cutter. This is the small stud bezel cutter from the shop. And I'm going to make a cabochon. Now the deli wrap is helping me make one that is rounded. So that's going to go in the center of one flower, and then we'll get another piece here. And then we've got a little lump of turquoise for another day. Make sure that your cabochon doesn't have any funky edges hanging out of it. And let's get back to the earrings here. All right, so now what we have is the flowers, the cabochon, which is going to go right in the middle of the flower, and I'm not going to fill in that hole for a reason that we'll get to in part 2 when we put the earrings together. And we're going to take this and make a, this thing is going to make a edge around the flower cabochon. All right, so we're going to take this. In fact, I'm going to flip this over and do it again because I feel like I need it to be pretty long, and I didn't give good even pressure on that side, and I really want to see those lines or beads, whatever you want to call them. So we're going to try harder to do a better job on this one. So that I have a nice long piece I can use. This is always the hard part, lining up and getting a nice straight cut. I think I got it. And then we're going to pinch off the end because it's not pretty. And put this around our flower. And I need to put on some glasses because we're getting to the part where I want to actually see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to put this around my cabochon. Figure out where it needs to be cut off. And use my tool to get everything where it needs to go. And now I've got that. Looks nice. So now I'll do the other one. And our next step is going to help stick everything together. So I want this to look like silver, and I have this very bright silver powder. I used to carry these. I called it Miracle Metals, because just look at that. And I am going to put this on here with my finger. My finger especially over the metal beads area. And then probably switch to an applicator of some kind. I feel like this blender brush is too big, so let me get an applicator, be right back. Okay, so I've got one of these guys so that I can get this powder where I want it to go, which is basically all over here, but not like, I want to leave some of it to look like that antique silver. So I don't want it to be all covering the entire thing. You know, if I use a big brush like this, then it's just going to fluff over the entire surface, and you won't see any of this beautiful granite color showing through. And that was kind of the point. The other thing I'm going to do with my applicator is run it along the edges, which will smooth them. And shape it. Always great to have the right tools. It really helps. All right, so now I've got this metallic look that's going to sparkle and shine and look like silver. Compare it to this, right? And then we can run this same silver over the flower petals. And this is really important, using the applicator to keep it off of the turquoise, which would be pretty difficult if I was trying to use my finger to get into that small space. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to know where to get this very shiny metallic powder. I do have a essential metallic palette in the shop at CreateAlong.com, but this is different. And the other thing I like to do is I like to use the cap. So I will dump product into the cap of my mica powders. And I'm also giving it a second and waiting for that powder to settle down before opening it, because I don't want to be breathing that in. If you're sensitive, you can wear a respirator like you would if you were doing resin, right? But I like picking it up from the cap. And in this situation, like maybe I have too much, so I can tap off some before going for it here. It only looks like too much. It's really not, because I'm trying to get really nice full coverage. This is the time now when you can work on smoothing over any blemishes that you got into the clay, fingernail marks, fingerprints, that kind of thing, because you've got the applicator doing some of that work for you. You also can turn it sideways to get into tight spots. Like up here, I'd like some coverage there, but I also don't want it to get too close to the sides. I don't want to cover, like I said, I don't want to cover all of the antique silver. All right, so you get the idea. Next, we'll be coming back to it. I'm trying to decide if I want to add any detail. I might want to do a little bit of just a little bit of this with a ball tool. Not a lot though. I want them to be simple. I want the flower and the turquoise to be really the prominent idea here, right? So I'm going to bake them after I fix the silver on the flower, and we'll be back. Now we're out of the oven, but the earrings are still a little hot. So here I have some clay glaze that has a little glitter in it because I like glitter. And this is gloss. And I'm not alarmed because the amount of glitter in here is actually quite small. It's just a very fine holographic, and it's going to give the turquoise that tiny little extra bit of sparkle that it needs to look like real stone. So I'm just going to add a little bit of glaze on top of here. The clay is still hot, so it's going to be nice. It's just going to cure. You don't have to heat cure it. Our glaze is just fine when you don't. But I'm thinking it'll help it smooth out, because sometimes when you brush any kind of glaze, you get brush strokes like I've got right here. So I'm going to add a little more, a thicker layer. And just let that sit. I did want it to look like a stone, not just that matte clay. And once these are cool, we're going to drill a hole in it and attach the bottom of the earring. Isn't that pretty? That's going to be nice. So we can drill those holes now. I've got a little handheld pencil drill. And I'm just going to drill holes right here. If you have a little mini drill, don't worry about drilling on your tile. The drill cannot go through the tile. Oops. Okay, so the holes are good, and I'm just going to clean this up into my little shavings bowl once again, because this is a dark color. I like to save them for putting in other clays and making faux stones and stuff. So we'll save that. For this shape, I'm going to take a hole on the bottom petal here rather than going between petals. And I'm going to need to span that distance with a jump ring. So I have some oval jump rings here. And I think these are going to be nice. They're going to do the trick of getting through that big space that I need to jump without hanging up the dangling aspect. You know, a lot of times people make earrings and the clay bits are too close to each other and they can't sway and dangle. So if you get a larger jump ring, then and it's a circle, then it's so big that the jump ring becomes a big part of the design. But here, if you use an oval one, you can eliminate some of that. So here's where I'm putting my hole. And I'm going to go ahead and do this right on the stud puck, because we can use it as a little jig. All right, So I did not apply any pressure there. What I was doing was just allowing the bit to bite into the clay and then just let it pass through. So if you're gentle, you can drill your studs from the front. Right, so now let's put these together and see what we've got. When you're opening a jump ring, you want to go sideways with it. So we're going to open it to the side like this. And of course it needs to be big enough to go through both this stud and to have this be able to hook onto it. So you just need to make sure, that you're opening it wide enough to accomplish that. And then you can just close it back up. And there it is. And this might be, I don't know, it might be too big of an oval ring. So let's try a little bit smaller one. I have two sizes in here. This is how you decide if you're done, when everything looks perfect. Right, so that's a smaller ring. And the way I make my pieces thin, which, 3 millimeters is quite thick for an earring. They don't have to be that thick. The way I do mine, it's pretty easy to get a smaller ring through both pieces. So let's see how it looks with the smaller sized ring. So we'll go this way with it. First, I always like to put it into the more delicate side first, because then I can wrestle with this other piece if I have to. Of course, doing this on camera is a little more difficult. All right, so we'll get it in that hole. Whew, I didn't want you to have to watch me wrestle with that. So I like this better. It's closer and tighter of a design than this one. Right, so I'm going to redo this one, this other one with a smaller ring. We'll see if this works for me better this time. So it did work a little easier to go through, let's see, the front piece on that other one. So let's see. Sometimes just depends on the angle of the holes. All right, here we go. So there we have them together. We'll just squeeze this shut. Now, what's the one thing, if you've made earrings before, what's the thing I didn't do? If you've noticed, I didn't sand anything. I don't generally sand, okay? If you use a nice sharp cutter, you don't have to sand your earrings to death. Okay, there's no edges. You just pay attention, make sure that there's no yucky edges on it when it goes into the oven. And if you do have a little thing like right here, it comes off real easy with your fingernail. But these earrings don't have any sharp edges, and they didn't have to be sanded. So I hope you have enjoyed learning how to make faux metal earrings. And they weigh almost nothing. So I like a big metal earring. I ride horses, in case you didn't know that. And the horse Western fashion has some really nice big concho style metal earrings that you can get, but they tie ears. So I'm excited to wear these. Be sure to comment and let me know if you have any questions. Leave a comment or subscribe to the videos to keep the good stuff coming, because everything helps on YouTube. And I'll see you next time on Polymer Clay TV.